Human beings spend their entire lives desperately running away from pain, grief, and heartbreak. Yet we do something completely irrational. We willingly pay money to sit in dark theaters or put on headphones in the middle of the night to break our own hearts. Why does a brain, biologically wired to seek pleasure and survival? The answer isn't that we are broken. It's that tragic art hides a biological secret we have completely misunderstood. For thousands of years, we have been captivated by tragedy. The ancient Greeks even built entire festivals around theatrical weeping. Aristotle called it catharsis, the purification of emotions through art. He believed fake tragedy healed our real wounds. But modern neuroscience reveals a completely different story. What actually happens inside your skull when you hear sad music? When we experience real-life grief, our brain releases cortisol, a stress hormone that triggers a biological state of emergency. But when the grief isn't real, when it belongs to a movie character or a melody, the brain doesn't panic. When the grief isn't real, when it belongs to a movie character or a melody, the brain doesn't panic. Without the actual trauma, your body simply absorbs the chemical comfort. It is essentially a biological, warm blanket for your mind. Add a rush of dopamine from the beauty of the cinematography, and sorrow suddenly transforms into a profound pleasure. Psychologists call this the safe zone. Tragic art acts as a flight simulator for the human soul. It allows us to practice facing devastation, heartbreak, and loss, knowing we are entirely safe just sitting on our couch. But evolution is brutally efficient. Why would nature waste energy designing a brain that loves practicing how to be sad? Charles Darwin believed that our capacity for sadness was not a design flaw, but a brilliant survival mechanism. Isolation means death. We needed a biological signal to show we are in deep distress. He has a dry eyes. Lost me at the scene. You can see. But if sadness is just a cry for help, why do we actively seek it out in movies and music? Psychologists point to a specific emotion called kama muta, an ancient Sanskrit term that translates to being moved by love. When you get goosebumps watching a tragic movie scene, you are not actually feeling despair. You are feeling connection. You are experiencing a sudden, overwhelming realization that human suffering is shared, and you are not completely alone. We live in a modern society that constantly demands relentless optimism. We are told to smile, hustle, and stay positive. This artificial brightness creates a profound sense of isolation because real life is inherently difficult, confusing, and chaotic. Tragic art becomes the only socially acceptable sanctuary where we are finally allowed to drop the happy mask. It is a quiet permission to feel the heavy weight of existence without having to explain it or apologize. When we stare at a lonely painting or read a heartbreaking poem, we are not looking at despair. We are looking at honesty. We find immense comfort in knowing that another human being felt the exact same emptiness we feel right now. Melancholic music and tragic literature act as a mirror, validating the dark emotions we are forced to hide every day. We don't crave the sadness itself. We crave the deep, authentic, human connection that only sadness can provide. This is why people who love sad art are rarely pessimistic. In fact, they often have a higher emotional resolution. They are not stuck in the dark. They just refuse to live in a world that is artificially overexposed. To appreciate tragedy is to understand the fragile, temporary nature of everything we love. It is the ultimate measurement of our capacity for love. You cannot mourn deeply if you haven't loved deeply. So the next time you find yourself playing that one heartbreaking song over and over again, don't try to turn it off. Don't fight the feeling. Because your brain is not looking for pain. It is just reminding you that you are still fully alive, and that you still have the profound capacity to feel. To truly understand how deeply we crave this feeling, we have to look at what philosophers call the paradox of fiction. Why do we shed real, physical tears for people we know perfectly well do not exist? When you watch a movie, your logical brain knows it is just actors, written scripts and camera angles. But your emotional brain, the ancient limbic system, cannot tell the difference between reality and a beautifully told story. It reacts to the narrative, as if the tragedy were happening directly to your own tribe, and nothing hijacks this ancient emotional system faster and more brutally than music. When you hear a minor chord, its acoustic frequency mimics the exact pitch of a human cry of distress. It bypasses your logic completely and strikes directly at your nervous system, demanding empathy. This brings us to a concept from the 18th century, formulated by philosopher Edmund Burke, known as the sublime. Burke argued that true beauty isn't just pretty. True beauty has an element of terror. The sublime is the feeling of standing at the edge of a cliff. You are terrified, but you are utterly fascinated. It is the sudden crushing realization of how small we are compared to the vast, chaotic universe. These artists understand a fundamental truth. We don't just consume art to be entertained. He didn't just paint cities. He painted the deafening silence of modern human existence. Or consider the cinematic masterpieces of Wong Kar-wai, where the neon lights seem to cry instead of the characters. Think of the deeply isolated, melancholic paintings of Edward Hopper. We consume it because we want to feel the full, agonizing weight of being alive. In a world of 8 billion people, it is terrifyingly easy to feel completely invisible. When we immerse ourselves in tragic art, we are temporarily curing that invisibility. We step into a shared space of vulnerability, proving to ourselves that our pain matters. This is why the modern obsession with toxic positivity is actually doing us more emotional harm than good. When we are forced to constantly suppress our shadows, we lose the ability to understand our own depths. Studies show that people who regularly engage with melancholic art are rarely depressed. They simply have a higher emotional resolution. They are not trapped in the dark. They just refuse to live in a world that is artificially overexposed. To deeply appreciate tragedy is to understand the fragile, temporary nature of everything we hold dear. It is the ultimate measurement of our capacity for compassion. As they say, grief is just love with nowhere to go. You cannot mourn deeply if you haven't loved deeply. The sorrow you feel is the absolute proof of the bond. So the next time you find yourself playing that one heartbreaking song in the middle of the night, don't try to turn it off. Don't fight the heavy feeling in your chest. Let it play. Because your brain is not desperately searching for a way to torture you. It is doing something beautiful. It is simply reminding you that, beneath the numbness and the noise of daily life, you are still fully alive. And more importantly, that you still possess the profound, deeply human capacity to feel everything. There is a specific kind of beauty in that realization. A beauty that only sadness can reveal. What is the one piece of tragic art? A movie, a painting. And more importantly, why do you keep returning to it? Let me know in the comments below. I would genuinely love to read your stories. Until next time.